Well, you know, the biggest question mark that we can't answer, there are two big question marks we can't answer with respect to the state of emergency. One is, you know, how real and how significant are some of the variants that are currently working their way around the world associated with COVID generally. You know, we currently test through the Broad a lot of the positive test results that come in to determine what's going on with variants here, and we have picked up a number of those variants as part of that process. And because they're relatively new, what people do know about them is they are far more transmittable than some of the previous variants associated with COVID. But whether or not that is enough to create another surge is sort of an open question at this point. We've been incredibly pleased by the fact that we've been able to vaccinate so many of the people who are most at risk of being hospitalized or losing their life over COVID. So as long as those vaccines stand up against the variants, you know, the thing you worry about the most here, which is people who are vulnerable and at risk getting COVID and getting sick and possibly dying, I think, you know, we've done a pretty good job so far of focusing on those key communities. That's question number one. Question number two is, what is going to happen with supply? And, you know, we heard in December that we would have more supply than we had demand by February. And then we heard in January we would have more supply than we would have demand by March. And then we heard J&J and Pfizer and Moderna make commitments to Congress about where they were going to be in March. And we're basically being told that between now and the end of March, we shouldn't expect any additional supply. And we will in April have more supply than we have demand. If we ever get to that point, and I really hope we do, the ability for us to move really quickly to vaccinate huge portions of the remaining population in Massachusetts is extremely high, given the amount of capacity that we have available. And for me, this whole thing is kind of the race against time with respect to whether or not there would be the potential of a third surge. But what I would say to you, that's a really long answer for, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the variants and what they mean with respect to transmission or vulnerable populations. And the second thing is, I don't know how fast, until I know more about the supply question, we can vaccinate. You know, we've done 2.2 million, 2.2 million doses at this point. About 700,000 people are fully vaccinated. You know, if we really did get more supply, if we got enough supply to meet the demand we have and the capacity we have, I mean, we could do more than 1 million people a month. Easy. We could probably do 2 million people a month. And that would move the ball in a big way to get us to the point where I'd start feeling comfortable that, you know, we can start thinking about where we are with respect to the emergency order. But there's still some unknowns out there that got to get worked through.